Hi, welcome to another episode of Trevor Loudon's Counterpunch, the show that details the unfolding world communist revolution and how we can push back. Now, as you may notice, I'm not in my usual jacket and shirt. I'm wearing my Slava Ukraine t-shirt. So you can probably guess what I'm going to talk about today. Now, I'm going to do something unusual today. I won't to quote extensively. I'm going to read the whole thing out. It's a speech recently written by Alexei Reznikov, the Ukrainian Minister of Defense. And I think it just sums up beautifully what is happening in Ukraine and the urgency of Western support. Now, I know this is a very controversial subject, especially amongst the conservatives of Europe and the United States, but please bear with me. I want to read out the speech in total, and then I want to make some of my own comments and add to it. So here we go. In an essay for the Atlantic Council published in December 2021, I stated that Europe's future would be decided in Ukraine. 1 year on, what may have earlier seemed like a bold statement is now a recognizable fact. Ukraine has become Europe's shield, defending the continent along a 2,500 kilometer front line. With each new success of the Ukrainian army, the threats facing NATO and the European Union diminish. Over the last 10 months, Ukraine has destroyed a large number of Russian army units that have been training for decades to attack the West. Russia's military potential will take years to recover. Ukraine's heroism has won Europe precious time to rethink its approach to security and defense. This re-evaluation should begin with a frank reflection on the events of the past 12 months. Every single pre-war Ukrainian warning regarding the likely consequences of a full-scale Russian invasion have come to pass. From millions of refugees to global energy and food crises. 1 year ago, Germany's leaders were still insisting the Nord Stream 2 pipeline was a purely economic project. It is now painfully obvious that there can be no return to the business as usual with Putin's Russia. Since the Russian invasion began on February 24, the international community has taken a number of appropriate steps to sanction Russia and has provided Ukraine with vital support that has changed the course of the war. Nevertheless, the fact remains that we requested most of these steps prior to the invasion, only to be told that that was impossible. This caution has proven extremely costly. Nor is the danger limited to Russia itself. In recent months, Moscow has sought to form criminal coalitions with other terrorist regimes. Russia and Iran are now testing cheap but deadly drone technology against Ukrainian civilian targets. It will come as no surprise if these weapons are soon deployed elsewhere. Russian military technologies offered to Iran in exchange for their support in Ukraine pose a further threat to international stability. Both Russia and Iran have previously been offered ample opportunities to pursue policies of global integration on very generous terms. They have consciously chosen confrontation and have sought to weaponize everything from energy and food supplies to migrants and social media. This proves the folly of earlier efforts to appease Vladimir Putin and gives a strong indication of what we can expect if Western leaders do not adopt a more resolute stance. Today's already alarming security will only deteriorate if Russia is not decisively defeated in 2023. The world has already paid a terrible price for handing Russia the geopolitical initiative. For Ukraine, this has included tens of thousands of lives and destruction on a scale not witnessed in Europe since World War II. For the wider international community, the economic costs can already be counted in the trillions of dollars. Clearly, it's time to try a different formula. The first step towards addressing the current security crisis is regaining the initiative. This means adopting tough preventative measures rather than simply reacting to Russia. It is vital to acknowledge the new security realities created by Russian aggression and reject attempts to resurrect the failed and discredited policies of the past. There can be no way back to the pre-war status quo. Most important of all, Western leaders must unambiguously identify Russia's defeat as an attainable and desirable goal. The coming year will present the perfect opportunity for the West to get it right. We expect to face many of the same security challenges encountered in 2022, including the possibility of a major new Russian offensives against Kiev and other Ukrainian cities. When Putin's invasion began on February 24, the world was initially stunned. This time there can be no such excuses. Russia is currently seeking to buy time in order to rearm. It is bombing Ukraine's energy infrastructure and creating a humanitarian catastrophe to force Ukraine back to the negotiating table. In parallel, all manner of voices are calling for a return to diplomacy and advocating a Kremlin-friendly compromise peace that would merely set the stage for more war. This is the most immediate challenge facing the international community. Ukraine's partners must reject such calls and underline that peace is impossible without Russia's defeat. Instead of seeking face-saving off-ramps for Putin, Western policymakers should now be looking to capitalize on Russia's weakness. This means supplying Ukraine with air defenses, long-range missiles, tanks and planes we need in order to end this war. Failure to do so will not prevent escalations, as some critics claim. On the contrary, hesitation on the part of Ukraine's international partners only encourages the Kremlin to continue its aggression. Does anybody seriously believe that not giving Ukraine Western fighter jets will make the world safe from Russia's next invasion? Will the absence of adequate air defense systems prevent the Kremlin from acquiring Ukrainian ballistic missiles? It is time to abandon such illusions. In 2022, Ukraine proved that it was more than capable of using Western arms supplies to great effect. With Russia now attempting to regroup and preparing a new wave of attacks, it makes no sense to delay weapons deliveries based on misplaced fears of escalation. This will only lead to more casualties and increase the price of Russia's eventual defeat. Instead, the West must learn the lessons of the past year and act decisively. Time and again, Ukraine's battlefield successes have confirmed that the only negotiating language Russia recognizes is the language of strength. Ukraine has forced Putin's army to retreat from the entire north of the country and has routed Russian troops in the Kharkiv and Kherson regions. The sinking of the Russian Black Fleet flagship and the destruction of strategic bombers at bases deep inside Russia have proved far more effective at grabbing Russia's attention than any diplomatic gestures. If Ukraine does not receive the necessary support in 2023, today's mounting security challenges will multiply exponentially around the world. A wide range of authoritarian regimes are closely monitoring developments in Ukraine and regard any Russian success as a green light for their own acts of aggression. There is also a danger that other regions of the world will prove less able to defend themselves than Ukraine. This gloomy scenario is both predictable and entirely avoidable. If the international community provides sufficient military supplies, there is every reason to believe that Ukraine will finish the job of defeating Russia in 2023. This would send a resounding message to any dictators and world-be conquerors that force is not a viable foreign policy tool. A Ukrainian victory would bring with it the prospect of a sustainable peace and the opportunity to build on the country's vast potential. The consequences would also be felt far beyond Ukraine's borders, with the security situation likely to improve dramatically in the Balkans, the Middle East, the Caucasus, and as far away as Central Asia and Africa. On a global scale, Ukraine's success would reinvigorate the entire democratic world while demonstrating the renewed strength of the rules-based international order. The world enters 2023 at a crossroads. Russia seeks to dismantle the progress of recent decades and drag us all back to an area of imperial aggression. But the Kremlin must first overcome Ukrainian resistance. If Russia is decisively defeated in Ukraine, the path will be open to a safer and more prosperous planet. Securing this defeat must be the international community's top priority in 2023. Well, strong words, eh? And I agree with every single bit of it. I would go a little bit further than Defense Minister Reznikov, because he's absolutely right in what he's saying. If Ukraine falls, China will attack the Far East, probably the United States itself. The Middle East will turn into a bloodbath, a nuclear bloodbath, as Iran probably attacks Saudi Arabia and Israel. You'll probably see North Korea attack South Korea. You'll see the communist wave that's going through Latin America now spill over even more into North America under the guidance of Mexico's communist president AMLO. So the whole world hangs in the balance here, and Ukraine is standing in the gap, like the 300, the famous 300 at Thermopylae in ancient Greece, the 300 that stopped the Persian invasion of Europe. It's a good analogy, I think. But I would go a little bit further than Reznikov again, because I think this isn't just a battle of imperial powers. This isn't just imperial Russia trying to re-establish this great, the old Soviet empire. I believe that Russia is still guided by communists, is still run by the KGB, and they are in alliance with China and North Korea and Iran and Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and several other nations, and right now they're trying to change the world balance of power in their favor. And if that is achieved, that's the end of Europe, that's the end of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Africa, Latin America, and most importantly, the end of the United States of America. That's 1,000 years of darkness, from Ronald Reagan's famous phrase.
We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
This is the argument we see a lot on the American right now. Well, it's just a regional struggle. Our own borders are wide open. Why are we spending all this money defending Ukraine? Now, I'll make it very clear here. I do not believe that Joe Biden and the Democrats are really trying to defend Ukraine at all. I think they're giving the minimum they can. I think they're siphoning off a whole bunch of the money. And I think they're basically going to hang Ukraine out to dry. So please do not think I'm on the same page as Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi. I want Ukraine to survive. I want to defeat Russia. Not that I want Russian boys to die. I wish every Russian boy currently fighting could go back home to his family and get together to overthrow the KGB state in Russia. That's what I'd like to see. And I'd like to see Ukraine live peacefully. I'd like to see every nation live peacefully. But that will only happen when the evil empire is stopped. And Russia is part of the evil empire with North Korea, with Iran, with Venezuela, with Nicaragua, with Cuba, etc. And so the big test is right now, will the West stand up against Russia and Ukraine? Or will the West try and appease Russia? Will the West cave, setting the stage for the takeover of the Baltic states and the annexation and control of all of Europe? And if America thinks it can survive without Europe, I think it shows a lot of naivety. It can't survive economically, and it can't survive geopolitically or militarily. And it won't be just Europe, it'll be Asia and the Pacific as well. It'll be the Middle East, it'll be Latin America, the whole lot. America will be completely surrounded and starved or nuked out of existence. That is the plan. So why do I think, when nobody else seems to, that Russia is still controlled by communists? Well, ask yourself this: why is Russia flying red flags on its tanks in Ukraine? Why are they doing that? When the Azov battalion, which is a tiny detachment, part of the Ukrainian armed forces, is spotted with a Nazi insignia, that's used to slander the whole country as Nazi. But we're seeing Soviet symbols go up on Soviet tanks all the time. The troops are wearing the famous red stars of the Soviet army. Why are Lenin statues going up in the occupied territories in Ukraine? Why are Donetsk and Luhansk now people's republics? Why are their governments openly communist? Why did Putin in 2017 convene a convention in Sochi, Russia? 30,000 young communist kids from all over the world. If you don't believe me, look it up. Google Putin, World Federation of Democratic Youth Conference, Sochi, Russia, October 2017. You'll see the videos online. All these 30,000 communists from all over the world. Putin convened it, Putin organized it, told them the future was theirs, go for it. It was to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. Why did Putin take part in organizing the World Youth Development Conference in Beijing in June? That was organized by the youth wing of the Chinese Communist Party and hosted several thousand young communists from all around the world. Why was Putin part of that? Why has Russia been in a military and political alliance with China since 2001, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Why do they hold joint military exercises together on a regular basis? The one outside Leningrad in 2017 is specifically themed on a war with America. Why does Russia, Putin's Russia, continue to support not just communist China, but communist Venezuela, communist Cuba, and communist Nicaragua? Why did Russia sign a treaty with China in 2019 to coordinate their propaganda globally? Why is China echoing Russia's propaganda points on Ukraine? Ukraine is a Nazi country. It's all about the biolabs. Ukraine is corrupt. It's full of oligarchs. All of these are Russian propaganda memes that have been flooding the world, aided by China, to the point that probably the majority now of American conservatives believe them, at least to some degree. One more little point of slight disagreement, well, not really disagreement, with Defense Minister Reznikov. It isn't about Putin. We talk about Putin because he's the convenient leader. He's the face of the new Soviet Union, like, Stalin used to be, and Khrushchev and Brezhnev, etc. But really, since Stalin, Russia has been controlled by the intelligence services. No Russian leader, including Gorbachev, gets into power without the blessing of the intelligence services, what used to be called the KGB. Well, same with Putin. Putin was a KGB guy. He's a Russian intelligence guy, head of the Russian intelligence services. Russia is attacking Ukraine because the Russian intelligence services, which are still communist to their bootstraps, want them to. If Putin died tomorrow, the war would continue because it isn't Putin's war. It's the KGB's war. It's the security intelligence, security apparatus's war. And the security apparatus is working with China and the other communist nations around the world to change the balance of power. So, yes, I support Ukraine. Absolutely. Do I support Joe Biden? Do I support the Democrats? Absolutely not. Do I wish that we didn't have to spend all this money defending Ukraine and drawing down our own military resources? Absolutely. Do I understand that if Biden had been a patriot and really an American, he could have stopped this war even developing? He told Putin to go to war. He said a limited military incursion in Ukraine would not merit an American response. That was the green light. Since that time, he's made a lot of noises and he supplied a lot of armaments, but not nearly as much as you might think. And a lot of the money, I believe, has been siphoned back to left-wing causes in the United States. So I will say this. The Ukrainians are the most slandered people in the world right now, just like American Trump supporters were slandered for several years by the same people. President Zelensky is probably the most slandered person in the world right now, just as President Trump suffered 5 years of slander. Remember, President Trump was a big supporter of Ukraine. He put Putin in his box. He gave Ukraine lots of weaponry, lots of support, and Trump supporters now should stop watching the Russian propaganda and understand that America's survival depends on Ukraine's survival. So I hope you find this food for thought. I understand this may challenge some of your preconceived ideas. I'm up for those challenges. I'm up for criticism. This is an important issue and we got to get it right. And nobody has a monopoly on truth, especially not myself. But I hope you've been challenged by this and I hope you'll do your own research. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Thanks for being part of the show. Thanks for standing up for America, for the country that you live in. Thanks for working for freedom. And I just want to end this. Thank you so much to the brave people of Ukraine. Thank you for taking the bullets that are meant for us. Thank you for standing in the breach. Slava Ukraine.